Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We are doing our March reading wrap up today. It's gonna be a long one. I'm gonna try not to make this too long because I read 14 books in the month of March, so we have a lot to talk about. Funny story, I remember from our February reading wrap up, I was talking about the fact that I had not actually read a lot of fantasy books in February, which is very out of character for me. Well, I can say that in March we kind of made up for it because for our genre breakdown for the 14 books that I read, 8 of those were fantasy. So we definitely got up to a lot of magic in this past month. I also read 1 sci-fi or lit RPG, 2 historical fiction, 1 romantic fiction, 1 romance, and then 1 general fiction. So I started the month very magic heavy. I then went into a little bit of real world. I then had a cozy fantasy week, and then I ended off the month with an accidental 1 book a day for 3 days reading streak. I did not do this on purpose. I wasn't even filming a vlog. I just felt so motivated at the end of this month to read that I devoured 3 books in 3 days, and it was absolutely wonderful. But all that to say, let's just get straight into the 14 books that I read. I started the month continuing some series that I was in the middle of, so you guys already know these 3 books that I started with, but of course for a recap, these too tall? That actually does fit in the frame. I'm kind of scared it's gonna tip over and like break everything, but hopefully she stays up there. But the first book that I read was Heat of the Everflame by Penn. This is the 3rd book in the Kindred's Curse saga. So it's a romantasy series. There are 3 books out so far, but there will be 4 total in the series. And before I read this one, it had been a very, very long time since I read the 2nd book, Glow of the Everflame. So I was jumping into this kind of being like, am I gonna be okay? Do I need to refresh myself, or will I be able to jump into this one? And I was actually very pleasantly surprised at how Penn was able to ease me back into this world without making it very obvious. So essentially, first things first, for a plot synopsis, the first book in the series follows DM. She is a healer in this world that is divided into all of these different regions and factions. Most of the regions have both humans and magical people called the Descended living there, but each region kind of handles their politics differently in terms of how the Descended are in power, in terms of how much freedom humans have or how they can live. But there are definitely tensions between the humans and the Descended. The Descended are essentially like half god, half mortals that have been descended from gods for many, many generations. And so they all have magical powers that are very reminiscent to elemental powers. DM is just a lowly healer at the start of the series. She has been training with her mother, who is more of like an expert healer, but at the beginning of the story, DM's mother has actually disappeared. She's been gone for around a month and no one really knows where she's gone. So DM on one hand is trying to figure this out, but on the other hand, she is stepping into her mother's healing duties. So DM is being sent to all of these places, including the royal palace, to help with healing everyone, including the royal family. And as DM gets more intertwined with this royal family, she starts to uncover all of these secrets about the world. We also have a very charming but brooding prince character in here. And yeah, it's a fun romantasy series. I did really enjoy the first book. DM as the protagonist, unfortunately, got a little bit annoying for me in terms of the 2nd and the 3rd books. She's the type of character that just waffles on everything. She can't make up her mind. She doesn't know what's wrong and what's right, which is okay. You know, we love following a protagonist that is dealing with battling sides and trying to figure out like who is doing this for the greater good. Who is the better side to be on? Like, who should I be helping in this case? Or like, can I try and help everyone but try not to hurt the other team side in the process? You know what I mean? So DM struggles with that a lot, which is always fun to follow in a fantastical world, but she's just never sure of herself. And she does waffle on decisions for a very, very long time. And these books are very long. And I honestly feel like most of the pages are spent just being in our protagonist's mind, mulling over things and not knowing what to decide. So for me, that is a little bit frustrating to read. She's also the type of protagonist who is so observant. She will notice everything that happens, little details, but she's not very good at putting 2 and 2 together. She'll be like, oh, I noticed that. I wonder why that is. I noticed that. I wonder what that is. And as the reader, it seems kind of obvious, but DM doesn't do that final step of putting 2 and 2 together and coming to a conclusion. So that's really frustrating to read. But All that to say, the plots in these books are very, very fun. In this one in particular, we did a lot of travel, which I absolutely love. I love exploring a vast, fantastical world where in each book we discover a different region of it, a different side, and we see how these different factions of people live and their different values. I have so much fun doing that. So I enjoyed that aspect of this book. I also really enjoy the main love interest in this book. He is not annoying. He is very caring, very supportive, just kind of like the perfect male love interest for a romantasy, I think, an actual healthy one that's not toxic and actually shows that he cares. So all in all, I thought this was fun. It felt like a whole bunch of side quests mushed together, but in the most fun way, so I didn't even mind that. And the endings of these books are always super, super twisty. So I'm excited to read the final one, see how this romantasy series concludes. I wouldn't say these are my favorite books of all time by any means, but they're definitely fun ones for me to read. So that's how I started off the month. I then read The Mask Falling by Samantha Shannon. So this is a high fantasy that is a little bit sci-fi-y because we're set in future London. So it's 2050, and in our world we have people who are clairvoyants. So there are a whole bunch of different mind powers that you can have, but the clairvoyants are currently being hunted by the government because they're seen as a threat, they're seen as dangerous, and as a result, the clairvoyants have all kind of banded together to create this underground crime syndicate. It's very, very organized, it's very, very structured. It's like a whole big city in itself of this underground society, and our protagonist Paige is a part of this. In fact, she's actually very high up. However, at the beginning of the Bone season, which is the first book, Paige gets caught. She gets thrown into prison, and while she's in prison, she learns a whole bunch of things about what the government is actually doing. Their schemes are bigger than anyone could have ever imagined, and this is just a really, really cool world to be in because we're set slightly in the future. It's always funny when I think that these books are set in like the 2050s because I'm like, that's not too far off. I'm still gonna be alive in 2050, but we're just in this kind of like slightly upgraded in terms of technology, upgraded world. And the first 3 books in the series are very, very London. Like you have the tube stops mentioned and actual neighborhoods that you know exist in London, but in this like future technology filled kind of a way. In this 4th book, however, we do move locations. I'm not going to say too much about it because obviously I don't want to spoil things, but we do explore new territory, and I was really excited to do that in the series because I, after reading the 3rd book, was starting to feel location fatigue. I loved the 1st book in the series so much, and I was kind of losing steam with them, so I was excited to branch off, kind of start this second wind of the journey, if you can call it that, and explore a new territory. And I was enjoying that in this book quite a bit for, I want to say, the first half of the book. The overall vibe of this one was very much like undercover, covert missions, very spy stuff, and I found that to be so much fun. I think what our protagonist was going through in this one was also really interesting. It was very much like rediscovering ourselves, redefining ourselves, also rebuilding and redefining the relationships that we're in. And this book was very, very concentrated. So where I was mentioning Heat of the Everflame was very side questy, this one had one focus, and you knew what that focus was throughout the entire plot, and I feel like that made this book just very compelling to continue to flip through. I'll also say I really enjoy the little romance subplot in this book. It's very odd. I feel like it's one of those romances that you'll either be like, this is weird, or you'll absolutely eat it up. There's something so fun about the dynamic between our 2 main characters. They're so at odds. They're so very, very different from each other in terms of their energies, in terms of their communication styles. It feels like it shouldn't work, and it really feels like, for the most part, it feels like they're not supposed to be together. There is a little bit of a forbidden love thing going on in here as well, which is super fun, but I really, really like their chemistry. It's just so odd. I was saying in my reading vlog, it reminds me a little bit of an art film where it's not so like blatant, like you don't get reasons why they should be together or reasons why they like each other. You can just feel their pull towards each other, and they're so kind of like weird with each other that it makes sense. I'm so sorry. I honestly don't know how else to describe the romance in this book, but I really like it in the weirdest way. There is also actually just a constant power power dynamic between them. Like one of them is always in a more of a power position depending on what situation they're in, and they're very rarely on an even level in terms of power shift. So I find that really interesting to read as well, just seeing how they interact with each other in different situations where one of them has the upper hand sometimes. So there's definitely a lot of good in these books. I will say I personally have started to feel a little bit disconnected to everything that's been going on in this world and to a lot of the characters. And I don't know if that's my fault because I've been putting a lot of space between reading the books in the series. Like I've been leaving months between reading the next installment. So I just feel like I've disconnected from these characters. So while I'm like, these books are good, I just feel like it's starting to get hard for me to care. So I'm gonna try and pick up the 5th book this next month before I leave too much space in between. And I'm gonna use the 5th book as my indicator of, do I care enough to continue reading on in the series past the 5th book, or will I drop this series? But these books are like objectively good. My two main things that I would say are actual problems for me when reading these are, number one, this one in particular had a lot of typos in it. And I usually try and let that pass by, but there were so many in this one that it was distracting me from reading. Like it was to that point where every, I don't know, like 20 pages, I would notice a typo and I'd be like, what is going on here? Why are there so many typos? So that kind of sucked, honestly, while reading through. And then the second thing, I didn't love the climax in this one. I feel like there was a plot twist that I was just like, we could do without this. Like, it's so obvious what this plot twist is trying to do to me. It was supposed to be this big shock factor moment, and I feel like shock factor moments only work when there is substance backing them up, and also when the shock factor moment actually sticks. But I feel like the plot twist in this one was a shock factor moment that was immediately redacted, or like as the reader, I knew that it would be redacted very soon. And so the overall point of the shock factor twist didn't exist because it was like, oh, here's the shock, and then never mind, it's because of this. It wasn't real to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't really like that. I don't like being gaslit by plot twists. But yeah, I'm gonna continue to read on to the 5th book, see how it goes. I think the series is great. I just feel like I'm losing a little bit of interest with it, and I don't know why. Okay, next read was actually a Kindle read. So I read Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of the novellas in the Stormlight Archive. This happens after Oathbringer, so it's kind of Stormlight Archive 3.5, and it's a fun little connector book. Stormlight Archive, in case you don't know, is a high fantasy series. We're set in a war-torn land, and we're essentially following a cast of characters as they try to navigate their morals, find their values, and try to stick to their values while, you know, kind of being forced away from them because they're in this tough war-torn situation. It's a very cool world. The magic system is very solid, very classic Brandon Sanderson. Like, you will know every single detail about this magic system and how it works mechanically, whether you like it or not. And there are 2 novellas in the series that I think are essential to read. I know novellas can kind of be a little controversial. Like, are they necessary to read for the series, or can I skip them? Are they just bonus material? And my official opinion on this stance is that the novellas in this series are absolutely necessary to get a full understanding of what's going on. There is definitely a lot of good information, helpful information that you get throughout the novellas. They definitely build towards the main plot, and they also just offer more insight into this world from different perspectives, because throughout the series we do follow a decent sized cast of characters in terms of perspectives that you change through, but they're all kind of on the same side, or like on one of 2 sides, I would say. In the novellas, however, you do get perspectives from people from other regions, and I feel like that really sheds a lot of light on what's going on. You literally get different perspectives of our main characters through the secondary characters that you see in the novellas, because you see like what they think of your main characters. So as the reader, you think of your main characters as a certain way, but when you see secondary characters thinking of those main characters, you just like, you get a wider view of all of your characters and like how they actually fit into this world. I hope that made sense. I feel like I went around in a few circles there, but they're super fun. They're also a little bit more lighthearted than the main series. They're definitely a little bit more humorous. The banter in them is a little bit more prevalent because we're also following just characters that are naturally more funny. In this one, as well as the other novella, Edge Dancer, in the series, we're following characters that are just like a little bit sillier. And they're just like kind of fun little light reads between your 1300 page tomes. And yeah, as I mentioned, you get a lot of different lore from these novellas, but in a really fun, approachable way. This one in particular also was such a well-contained story that I would say would hold up on its own in terms of like a story with a beginning, middle, and a very satisfying end. I obviously would not recommend you read this novella without reading the other books in the series because you're gonna like not know where you are and like what world we're in. But in terms of story arc, like this novella felt very complete. It's a story that highlights underdogs in this world, which I love. It's about them finding their place in the world. There was also some really, really wonderful disability rep in this one, which was very, very interesting because I feel like we don't see a lot of that in fantasy, or if we do see it, it's kind of skimmed over. We're not really seeing the details of it. But in this one, we actually follow a character with a disability and we see in a lot of detail how she deals with it, how people are treating her, and we follow her as she tries to find ways where she can feel useful and navigate this dangerous fantasy world while living with disability. And I thought that was really, really well done. So I love this one. There's a little bit of a pirate adventure vibe. We're exploring new uncharted territory. There's kind of a little bit of a treasure hunt feeling, I want to say. So it was really fun and it made me really excited to continue on in the series. I'm actually currently reading Rhythm and War, the next like big book in the series, as I'm filming this wrap up. It's right behind me on my desk. So yeah, that was a fun little novella. Next book was included actually in my next reading vlog. So I read, this isn't gonna stand up, I'm gonna put it down here. I read The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is one of the prequels that comes before main book 1 in the Witcher series. It's another high fantasy series. This one is a very dark fantasy world, and we basically follow Geralt in this book, who is a witcher, and we follow him as he does a bunch of witcher tasks. So a witcher in this world is essentially like a monster slayer, a monster hunter kind of thing. They just go around getting hired for freelance contracts essentially to like get rid of beasts, get rid of monsters. And so this book is essentially like a collection of short stories where Geralt encounters these different characters and fulfills his witcher contracts. And I didn't like this one. It was my first 1-star of the year, unfortunately. I did rag on it a little bit in my reading vlog for this one, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but I essentially just couldn't get along with the writing style. A lot of it does have to do with the translation from the original Polish version to the English edition that I read. I have since learned that this is quite a common opinion of these books, is that the English translation of these prequels really are not great. The translator did a very blunt job, essentially just kind of taking literal meaning and translating to English, but didn't take into account a lot of the nuance in the actual writing. And so a lot of the original meaning of the text got missed in the translation to English, and I think that is a big reason why I did not love this book. My main issue with it is I just hated, really, really hated how women were portrayed in this. I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can look at my Goodreads review if you want to see kind of vague, spoilery things of what I didn't like, but women were just not portrayed well at all in this book, and it was making me very mad while reading it. I also think on top of the writing style stuff, I'm generally just not a fan of jumping into a new fantasy world with a bunch of short stories. I much prefer a cohesive, like a nice long connected plot with like a full story arc, and I feel like this format just feels disjointed to me. I think honestly I might have had a better time just jumping into book 1 of the series instead of starting with the prequels, but I was recommended to jump into the prequels first. I also know that there's a different translator that did the main series compared to the prequels, and so I've heard that the translation in the main series is actually better. So for now I have decided to DNF the series just because I'm so mad at this book in particular, but I'm kind of starting to open up to maybe giving the main series a try like next year. I definitely need to give myself some time to calm down after reading this one, but I could potentially give the series another go next year and just skip the prequels, go to the main series where the writing is apparently better, because there are some story arcs, some character arcs that I want to experience in this one, and I'm just too jaded right now. Okay. Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is the lit RPG that I read this month. Definitely kind of a new genre for me. I would describe this one as sci-fi dystopian, but you're following your character like move to move. Like it's just very detailed on the mechanics of what's going on and like the specific actions. It feels like a video game, but essentially in this one we follow Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut. At the beginning of the story, Princess Donut runs outside. She's like having a fit. Carl doesn't know what's going on with her, weather, so he follows her outside, and when he goes outside, the world flattens. And by that, I mean very literally, the world flattens. The building that he lived in, that he was just in, gets crushed. And everyone who is inside at this moment in time gets crushed along with the buildings and dies. Turns out an evil corporation is actually taking over worlds, like all kinds of different worlds, and destroying them, taking over them to mine for like a substance. They also are kind of sick and they really like entertainment. So after destroying this world, for any survivors, they have the chance to enter into these dungeons and participate in this kind of Hunger Games style thing where they can fight for their chance to survive and also to provide entertainment for this like evil world. So Carl ventures down into the dungeons. We essentially have 18 levels, so it functions very much like a video game. We have 18 levels of dungeons that Carl and Princess Donut together will have to traverse to try and just like stay alive, essentially. They have no other option. Throughout this entire journey, throughout this entire game, they are being watched by essentially like the Capitol. I keep comparing this to Hunger Games because that's like the closest comparison, and the Hunger Games is obviously so iconic. But yeah, he's essentially just become a video game character. And as I mentioned, the mechanics of how everything works in these dungeons are very video game. So like you have HP, you have levels, you have experience points, you have your like abilities, like you have a strength level, a constitution level, an intelligence level, all these things. You have an inventory, you can loot, you have like a map that you can see in the corner of your eye, like an on-screen map kind of a thing. You can navigate through menus. It's very, very gamey. And while these books are super, super fun, they're quick, they're witty, there's a lot of humor in them. There's also this darkness. There's this horrific side of things when you actually think about what's going on. So you have this horrific, sinister quality to this book, but told in this very like lighthearted jokester kind of a way. So very interesting dynamic with that, and I enjoyed it. There is a bit to the sense of humor that is too much for me. It's a little bit brain rot style humor is what I've been calling it, but it is entertaining. I'm curious to read on. I have heard that as the series goes on, things get a lot more complex, things get darker, things get more emotional, so I'm curious to see what happens. That was my foray into Dungeon Crawler Carl. Okay, diving into a little bit of YA fantasy though. The paperbacks never want to stand up. So I read Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Finally. I know, it's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to dive into Cassandra Clare for a while. It's a phase in life that I absolutely missed, but the time has come. I have finally dove into this one. So this is the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy. I honestly didn't really know too much going into this one. I wanted to go into it somewhat blind because I wanted to just like make up my own mind about it. All I knew about the series going in was that it was a YA series. It was like quintessential YA. We're set in Victorian England, and I knew that a lot of people were loving a character named Will Herondale, and that's essentially everything I knew about this one. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I dove into this book and just like realized how moody it was. I was just expecting like a light elemental magic YA fantasy type of story, but the fact that this book has like demons, it has secret societies and cult stuff, it's got a little mystery plot going on. It was really, really fun for me to read. I really enjoyed it. I also just really love the Victorian England kind of era, and to mix that in with magic and fantasy and all of that. It's just so, so much fun. So in case you don't know what this one is about, we follow Tessa. She has recently sailed from America to England to meet up and live with her brother. But when she arrives in London, her brother is not there to pick her up. Apparently he has sent these like other people that he knows to pick her up, so she goes along with them, and she immediately gets thrown into this whole other world of, as I mentioned, secret societies, demon stuff, cults, we have vampires, we have all kinds of supernatural, and Tessa also realizes that her brother has actually gone missing. So we also have a missing persons mystery. So Tessa now has to kind of like run, hide, figure out life for herself, but also try and find out what happened to her brother, and she gets tossed into all of these dark organizations along the way. This was just a full fun escapism read for me. I really, really enjoyed my time with this one. It's really easy to read because it is YA, so the writing is very, very easy to pick up, and it just also has that nostalgic feeling. I don't know, it feels comforting. It feels like the type of book that made you fall in love with reading when you were younger. I think it just has all of those elements that make you feel good in a YA fantasy book. We also have a lovely found family family, and the found family is even filled with like all of those characters that you love in a found family. We have like the nurturing mother type character. We have the quirky inventor that kind of adds a little bit of humor but definitely cares under his kind of aloof personality. We have a snobby kind of feeling character, but when you dive deeper into her, she also, you know, she has a whole backstory going on and you start understanding her more. And then we of course have our mandatory love triangle going on with our moody, broody character, and then with our honestly like probably more healthy character. It's just fun. It's just fun. It's escapism. I'm excited to continue on in this series. I love that this one gives me nostalgia, but also like dark secret society feelings. I really love it. So thank you to everyone who continuously screamed at me to actually get into this series. I'm having a lot of fun. So there's that. Okay, we're still trucking our way through the fantasies. So the next one I read was A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Span. This was actually our long distance book club read. So it was really fun reading this alongside so many of you guys, but this is an upper YA fantasy standalone that honestly is so unique. So first things first, I think if you loved Caraval, I think if you loved The Night Circus, you would have a good time with this one because it kind of gives those circusy, it's not quite a circus in this one, but it does give kind of whimsical circus vibes. And this one feels like just a love letter to acting and theater in so many ways. So the plot for this one, we follow Riven, who was cursed from a young age. So she's been growing up with this curse her entire life that affects her well-being, her health, her physical appearance. And so her day-to-day life is just not like what she would like it to be ideally. One day, the Playhouse appears. And the Playhouse in this world at first was very reminiscent to, Caraval or like the circus in The Night Circus. It just appears out of nowhere one day. It just, you wake up and the circus is there or the Playhouse is there. And the Playhouse is essentially this magical theater where these godlike players, the players are kind of like the actors, they put on performances. And the Playhouse is either revered or absolutely hated and feared. So we have one side of this world that absolutely loves the Playhouse. They worship them. They literally treat them like gods. And then we have another side that fear this Playhouse and they hate them and they want to get rid of them and they want to like lock them up and make sure they like can't appear again because these players, these godlike actors are very dangerous. They're very powerful and they in the past have done things to harm humans. So Riven lives on the side of the world that hates the Playhouse, but the Playhouse, when they appear, announce that they're going to be hosting this big spectacle where humans will have a chance to kind of join and compete for a chance to steal a player's immortality and become a player themselves. And Riven, of course, gets tossed into all of this. She kind of starts seeing this as a chance to maybe try and lift her from her curse to heal her finally. And so she gets involved in all kinds of ways. And I had so much fun reading this one. Honestly, so much fun. I feel like because I am such a theater nerd, like I did musical theater camp growing up, I really appreciated just like the dedication to the bit in this one in terms of sticking to the theme of acting and theater. Like everything in this book pointed towards acting, all the way down to the magic system and how everything worked. Like learning how to do magic was essentially learning acting methods, like acting technique. Breaking the rules was also very tied into magic. Like, oh, like stay in the light, don't step into the shadow, like stick to your spotlight, don't break the fourth wall. A lot of these types of things were mentioned in this book and it was just so much fun for my little like theater nerd inside of me. There's also a lot of Greek mythology tied into this as well, so I really like the combination of Greek mythology and theater all combined into one. And overall I loved how this book really emphasized the fact that art and storytelling is so powerful and can be so powerful and can be very dangerous when placed into the wrong person's hands. That was a big major theme in the story because in this world, storytelling, like writing, songwriting, music, art in general is banned from this world, and only the players in the Playhouse are able to like house art, create art, and only they are able to control like the way art is presented and like which plays get told, which stories get told to the world. And so I love the emphasis on how powerful that is. There were some fun plot twists at the end of this one as well. I also really like how Shannon played with format in this one. We did play around a little bit with like dialogue format, like script format in this book. And I'm not going to dive too deep into that because there is a rhyme and reason, and that script dialogue was placed in there very intentionally. So I'm not going to like dive too deep into like why that was done, but I loved the incorporation of that too. I love when books play around with format. It just adds a whole like other level of, you know, like something that you can play around with, that you can get creative with. And so yeah, I love this. It was so creative, such a wonderful story. I will say the protagonist is one of those characters that kind of gets annoying sometimes in terms of the decisions they make, but I will say in the end, it did all kind of make sense. So I really enjoyed this one. If you're looking for a standalone fantasy, would recommend. Okay, next up, we're diving into my cozy fantasy kick. So I did have a week where I was just like feeling all kinds of cozy vibes. The first one I picked up was Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. This one was really cute. I really wanted to pick this up because it's set in 1920s Montreal, which is just an atmosphere that I really wanted to be in. We also follow the owner of a cat rescue, so there's definitely a lot of cat stuff in this one, and as a proud cat mother and as a cat lover myself, I had to do it, you know? So in this one, yes, we follow our cat rescue owner, and at the beginning of the story, she is trying to find a new place to rent to have her cat shelter in because her current place that she's using has been destroyed, kind of. Like there's been physical damage done to it. It's not going to hold up for much longer. Basically, these magicians had a duel, like, and it went wrong and a whole street got damaged, and her cat shelter was one of those buildings that got damaged. So she's trying to find a new place to rent, and this is proving to be very hard because not a lot of landlords want 50 cats in their property. So Agnes, her options are slim, but she comes across a place that has a little bit of a mysterious air to it, but they are definitely accepting of her, and they're like, yeah, you can rent our place. So she's like, you know what, this place seems kind of odd, but I'm gonna rent it anyways because I have no other option. So she moves in, she gets all her cats in, and she reopens her cat shelter here, but she also starts noticing some weird characters coming in, like some oddball looking people who don't look quite like regular humans, and they walk in and they kind of just disappear, maybe through the back door, maybe through another way. And she's at first like, I'm just gonna ignore this because I paid rent and I can't have any issues right now. Like, I'm relying on this place to work out. So she ignores it for a while, but it gets more and more obvious, it gets more and more disruptive, and she finally realizes that her landlord has actually been using her cat rescue as a front because he has been running this super illegal underground magic store, basically under her cat rescue, like in the basement. And so she figures this out. She gets tied into all of this like illegal, illicit magician stuff that she doesn't want to be tied into, but is forced to be tied into, and the two of them have to figure it out together. This book, I would say, is like 90% cozy vibes, just like running the cat rescue, hanging out with cats, eating chocolate pastries. It's definitely very cozy. A lot of it is like day-to-day tasks, but done in a way that like I didn't feel bored, and I don't know if it was just because I was in the perfect mood to read this, but yeah, 90% is super cozy, and then like 10% of this book is like randomly high action, high stakes. And I overall really enjoyed this book, but the transition between the cozy to the high stakes was a little jolting. It happened all of a sudden. There was no like gradual buildup towards it. So that really surprised me, took me out of it. That was probably like the weakest part of this book for me, but that's okay. That was just a little portion of the book. There is also a romance subplot in this one, and that honestly also went from 0 to 100, but I honestly kind of liked that because the nature of our romance in this one is very awkward. We're following two characters that don't really know how to interact with each other. They're both a little bit like socially awkward. They don't know how to handle themselves in these like types of situations, and so a lot of their interactions are very bumbling, like they don't really know how to deal with the other person. And so the fact that their romance went from 0 to 100 fit their characters so well for me that I ate it up. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. There's just something so fun about watching two awkward characters trying to banter with one another. I liked this one. It honestly reminded me a lot of Howl's Moving Castle in many ways. I would say the movie version, not the book version of Howl's Moving Castle, and that's all I'm gonna say. There were a lot of elements that I was like, this is giving Howl, or like this is giving The Castle. So yeah, if you're looking for just like a nice, cozy, feel good, whimsical time, definitely recommend. Okay, second cozy fantasy, and I would argue is one of the prettiest books I own at this point, The Elsewhere Express by Samantha Soto Yambao. This is the same author that wrote Water Moon, which I read last year, and so I kind of knew what I was expecting diving into this one. This author's books are very Studio Ghibli vibes, very, very whimsical, very abstract, like you're just kind of running through these dreamlike worlds. I don't even want to say worlds, just dreamscapes, maybe. Like you're just running through dreamscapes is a good way to describe these ones. The plot of this one is we follow Raya, and she is a songwriter who has lost her purpose. So she's recently lost her brother, and growing up, she's just been kind of like, her parents have put her in this position where she's grown up thinking that her entire purpose in her life is to take care of her brother and to take care of his health. But now that her brother is gone, she has no purpose in life. She just feels very aimless, very lost. She doesn't know what the point is. So she's just on the subway one day. She's taking the train, and all of a sudden she finds herself, she blinks, she opens her eyes, she finds herself in this magical version of this train called the Elsewhere Express. And so this is a train that apparently can help you find your purpose again. And so we just follow her as she goes on board this train and tries to find her purpose. And I will say this is a train in the most abstract way. And I think while reading this book, I was just craving a little bit more train. Like after reading the premise, I was like, okay, I know we're gonna have whimsical dreamscape worlds in this one because I read Water Moon, and I know it's going to be very Ghibli vibes, very like Spirited Away. But I feel like this was just more abstract than I could even have ever imagined. Like we maybe only had one chapter or two chapters where we actually were in a train that was reminiscent of a train, where we had like, a cart with seats and windows and things like that. This train was not really a train. It was like, how can I explain it? Like doors were picture frames. The walls were made out of feelings. The food was made out of dreams. Like spicy food is kind of made from nightmares. That kind of thing, where it's like this train was literally made out of thoughts and dreams and prayers and wishes in the most physical but like abstract way. So yeah, while reading this one, I was like, I just kind of want more train. Like I kind of just wanted a train where we could sit and it would take us to abstract worlds instead of like the train itself being so abstract. I just wasn't expecting that, I guess. So I was trying to settle into it, and I think for a little bit I was. Samantha Soto Yambao's writing is really, really beautiful. It is gorgeous. It's so descriptive. I mean, to write a story like this and to write in an environment like this, you have to have very beautiful writing, and she does that very well. But I think after a while, like being in these worlds, just like being whisked from like train compartment to train compartment, I was just getting tired. I was like, oh, there's so much, like the world is just so ever changing. I just wanted somewhere stable that I could go back to and sit like a real train car. I will say though, as we were going through the story, I think what we did with our protagonist's journey and her feelings and secondary characters' feelings as well, and how everyone was going through their arcs and figuring out their purpose and everything, was done in a really, really creative way. Like how everything manifested into like a physical element on this train, but it was actually made out of like thoughts, feelings, dreams, lost wishes, stuff like that. But it was also to the point where it was like a little bit too much. Like as I was reading, I kept noticing the creativity instead of living in the creativity. There would be things like, I don't know, I'm just giving random examples, but like, oh, this table was made up from that like one lost dream that where you thought of this. And I'd be like, oh, that's a clever way to think of a dream, kind of stuff like that. But I feel like because my brain just kept noticing things like, oh, that's clever, that's clever, that's clever too. I just felt like maybe it felt a bit gimmicky in that way because I kept just thinking of the cleverness of it instead of being lost in the story and like going along with the emotional journeys. So I think like by the end of the story, I could see where we were trying to go. Like I could see the point we're trying to make with the emotional rides that we've just gone on, but I couldn't actually emotionally connect to it because all of my brain capacity was being used just to notice these clever little connections and things going on instead of like focusing on being invested in the characters. So I'm very mixed on this one. I think the writing is beautiful. I think the idea is wonderful. I wish I loved it, but maybe it was like wrong book, wrong time for me. I don't know. It is still very beautiful though, like physically. I don't think anything can take away from that. It's, you know, I will have this book. I will hold this book with pride for the rest of my life because it's just so pretty. All right, guys, we finally made it out of fantasy. That was a big section this month. We're diving into historical fiction though. So the first one I read is, of course, Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. This was in one of my reading vlogs this month, so you guys already know. Whoa, there it goes. You guys already know I absolutely adored this book. Loved it so much. This is a new author to me, and I just can't believe I've waited this long to read her work. But this one is set in 15th century China. We follow Lady Tan, who is a woman who grew up in a very noble, like elite status household. And growing up, she was taught very traditional views from her mother in terms of how a woman's life should progress in this era. But at the same time, she also had this influence from her grandmother, who liked to study medicine. And so Lady Tan has grown this passion for medicine from her grandmother. She's learned, you know, these healing techniques, kind of how to diagnose people, and she wants to be a physician. But when she reaches the age of marriage, she gets actually sent into an arranged marriage, and the family that she marries into, in particular her mother-in-law, really has very, very traditional views on what a woman should be, like what a good woman is. And so Lady Tan is now just like forced into this role of being a traditional housewife. Her mother-in-law doesn't want her to practice medicine anymore because it's not traditionally womanly, it's not really wifely. And so we have to navigate this on like how to continue our passions, but also how to not anger the family that we've just married into. And along the way, we gain this understanding of all kinds of women who were living in this time and how they dealt with these beauty standards and expectations of them. This story was absolutely incredible. The amount of research I think that Lisa C put into this book was incredible. Lady Tan is actually a real person who was actually a physician during this era, and this book is based on journals, these medical journals that were preserved from this time and that Lisa C came across. So I found it so interesting reading about all of these medical cases, knowing that they were based from like true medical cases that were logged into her real life journal. I think that was really, really cool. And I think throughout this book, we just follow the bonds between women and how women just like have this base understanding, this like deep soul understanding with each other, even when they come from such different backgrounds, even when they deal with their restrictions in such different ways. And these restrictions can make them kind of like turn against each other and clash. But in the end, at the end of the day, we understand each other. We can relate to each other on such a deep level. And I found that was done really well in this one, because I think this book, when I was going into it, I think there was a part of the blurb that was like, this book highlights female friendships and stuff like that. So I was expecting like a very close-knit circle of women, right? It's called Lady Tan's Circle of Women. I was expecting a very close-knit, like found family kind of a vibe. And we didn't necessarily get that, but it was more just like, we did have a circle of women that were very much like involved with each other, but it like, we didn't love each other the whole time, you know? It wasn't just like a found family, you know, we're gonna support each other to the death kind of a thing. It was a lot more complicated than that, but it was more of, as I mentioned, a journey of like understanding each other and clashing in different ways, but like you just know where the other woman is coming from. And I think that was more of the feeling of this one. There are so many like hard-hitting quotable lines in this book, so many great messages, and I'm just obsessed. This is historical fiction done right for me, where we learn so much. We get so much detail, we learn a lot of history, but it doesn't feel like a textbook because we're following the stories of these humans and how they navigated these times. And we have like, it's just more emotional that way. You can connect to the stories a lot more, and I'm obsessed. I'm definitely diving into more Lisa C in the coming months, but this was absolutely wonderful. All right, guys, I need some tea. My throat is starting to get parched. It's that time of the wrap up. It's that time of the wrap up where I just like require hydration or else I'm gonna lose my voice. All right, second historical fiction. We have a really, really cute tiny book. Look how small this is. Please just look at it. It's so cute. I love it. Anyways, this is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I needed to pick this one up before we got into like actual spring weather because this is very much a cold weather read, I think. It's set in 1985 Ireland and it takes place around Christmas. So it's just a cold weather read. I was honestly thinking I would save this book until like next Christmas to read, but I had heard from you guys, like, even though it's set around Christmas, it's not very much like a Christmas story, you know? It's not like a cozy feel-good Christmas story. It's more just like a book set in cold weather. This follows Bill, who is a coal merchant. He lives with his family. He has a wife and 5 daughters, and we are in the weeks leading up to Christmas, so he is very busy. It's one of his busiest times of the year where he's delivering coal to like all kinds of people. So he makes a delivery to the local convent, and while he's there, he kind of sees something weird. He basically learns or starts suspecting that this convent is doing something very, very suspicious, very, very disturbing. And this forces him to start thinking about the power the church has on this town, the control they have, and also like what it is to stay complicit with evil to stay safe. There's also some reflection on the past with family and caring, caregivers, all of that. So it's just a very reflective short story that dives into all of these things. It is a beautifully written story, first and foremost. I think while reading this, I just kept admiring the writing. It's quiet, but it's powerful. And it's just one of those books where you open the first page and time passes, you know, time just goes away. The world falls away. You just flip through the story, you keep going, and you get to the end and you're like, wow, that was a great experience. I think this is a simple but layered story. It's a story where you can either read it quickly and you can be like, oh, that was great, that was lovely, it was wonderful, and you can just leave it, or you can let it linger and continue to think about it for days, weeks, months, years, however long it may be, because it's just a story that it gives you things to think about. So you can either take it at face value or you can dive as deep into it as you want to. I think this works because it is a book that is filled with self-reflection. We are exploring some honestly really complex themes like the power and control of church over a small town, and also the balance of, yeah, when you find something out but like it could endanger you to like step in and do something about it. Do you step in and help someone, or do you protect your family because you have 5 daughters? It's also honestly left a little bit open-ended, and I think that's why I couldn't give this book a 5-star. I feel like some people love that. Some people love when a book is left open-ended, leaves you with questions to think about, stuff like that, and I see the point in it and I appreciate it, but I'm the type of reader that like I need a satisfying ending to make me feel fulfilled. Like it doesn't have to be a happy ending, it could be a sad ending, it could be tragic, it could be horrific, but I just need to know. And I feel like because this book was so short and because it did have a slightly open ending, I just wanted more. Like I got to the last page and I was like, wait, that's it? Like, I actually want to read more of this. And, you know, that's actually probably a good thing about this book, is that the writing was so good, the story was so compelling that I wanted more of it. I wanted it to be longer, I wanted it to continue, but it does leave you open-ended quite purposefully, and I understand the point in it. I just wish we had a conclusion. I wouldn't say this book is heartwarming, and I think that's why a lot of you told me that this isn't quite a Christmassy read. It actually is quite disturbing. There are some disturbing things that we cover, but it's written very beautifully, so it feels kind of like a bedtime story, but like a disturbing bedtime story. And I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for something short that you can just kind of read in one sitting, if you just want to like dive into something that will make you think. It's, yeah, as I mentioned, one of those quieter stories. We're not really talking about like a big hero who's going on this epic journey or growth or whatever. It's about the small moments. It's literally called Small Things Like These, and that is really, really what this book is about. I would definitely recommend this one. I want to dive into more of Claire Keegan. So yeah, this was a lovely little read. Okay, we're getting into some romantic reads. So this first one, I've kind of classified as romantic fiction, not quite romance, because it's one of those, not even half and half. I feel like this book is mostly fiction with a bit of romance, but there definitely is like a romantic theme going on the whole time. But this book, Made Me Think of You by Libby Page. This book follows Tilly, and her husband passed away 6 months ago. ago at the start of this book. She gets surprised one day though when she gets a call from a bookstore, and the bookstore tells her that her husband has actually left her a gift. And she's like, well, that's impossible. Like he passed away 6 months ago. How did he leave me a gift? They go on to tell her that actually before his death, he planned this whole thing where he selected 12 books, one for each month, to give to her for like the year after his passing, to basically help her like move on and to like start living life without him in her life. So basically, as we go through this book, every month she goes back to the bookstore, picks up another book plus a letter that he's left her to go along with the book, and we follow her throughout this year as she goes through her journey with grief and learns how to find the little joys in life and how to live life again. This book overall was very feel good. I did tear up a couple times. I think, you know, like with the nature of a story like this, you're gonna expect to get a little bit emotional. I will say I didn't get as emotional as I thought I would for this one. The first bit of this book was honestly the most emotional part for me and was the part where I teared up. The second half of this book didn't hit as hard for me, and I will explain why. But just to start, this book was very simply written. It's definitely not overly descriptive. It's not hard to read at all. It's very like it tells you things very literally, and it's very, very easy to follow. And as we go through the story, as we open up different books, see why he sent these books to her, read the letters that he left for her, we get these flashbacks into their past as well, and you know, get these parallel moments where certain books or certain letters will remind her of things that happened in the past with their relationship. So, okay, in terms of my emotional ride with this one, at the beginning, I absolutely loved it. I think the book choices plus the letters were just getting me really emotional. It really reminded me of that movie, P.S. I Love You, but also combined with Eat, Pray, Love in a way. But I think as we went on, because the nature of this book is we're following 12 months, and each month we're gonna like repeat the same thing over and over again essentially, it did start getting redundant for me. I think with the book recs plus what we were seeing in the letters from him, it almost just kind of felt like we were going through the same thing but with a slight variation, and the variation wasn't different enough to make me be like, oh, like here's another good revelation in this next month. It just all felt sort of samey in the middle portion of this book. So I think when we got to that point, I just started zoning out of it emotionally. I just wish there was a little bit more variety placed into there, a little more creativity on like, okay, what is this month's book going to bring us? I think the steps were just like a little too similar, a little too subtle. And so I think by the end of the book, I was just like, okay, this is done. I think this book would have been stronger, honestly, if we skipped a couple of the middle months or just montaged them together. You know, we could be like, you know, after the fourth month, we could skip to the 10th and be like, okay, so we had several months where we got books of like this, and this, and they taught me this, and this. And honestly, I think that might have worked better just to alleviate some of the redundancy and the repetitiveness of it all. So yeah, by the end of it, I was kind of disconnected emotionally from it. And it's a little bit of a shame because I wanted the end to hit really, really hard. But also the end was a little bit more feel good versus like big emotions. This is the final one. I would still recommend it. I did enjoy a lot of this one. I loved the idea of it, and it was a nice, gentle read. So yeah, I still think it's good. It just did get a little bit rinse and repeat in the middle portions. Okay, this next one though, this is a contemporary magical realism romance, and I didn't really love this one so much. So this is Over and Over by Becky Hunter. I really liked the concept of this one, but it didn't work for me. So this one essentially gave me the vibes of Our Infinite Fates, but make it less like angsty fantastical and make it more contemporary romance, because we have a reincarnated love situation going on. Our protagonist is Lissa, and she meets Ash in a very low time in her life. She feels this instant connection to him, and she's not sure why, but she's just like drawn to him, and they start getting to know each other more. But as this happens, Lissa starts getting these weird flashback memory dream kind of things where she's reliving these memories, but from past lives, it seems like. In all of these dreams, she's in these like different eras, different decades, but in all of her past lives, she always meets this one person who also like appears different in all of her past lives. They fall in love, but it always ends badly. So Lissa comes to this realization that she's going through this cycle again, but she needs to change something or else it's going to end badly again. But she's just like, she doesn't even know what she's supposed to be changing. So we follow her as she tries to figure this out. So you can see the similarities to Our Infinite Fates, right? Like it's a reincarnation story. We're seeing kind of these different reincarnations and seeing these two characters fall in love. It doesn't end well, and we're trying to break out of the cycle. It's very much the same vibes, but yeah, less high stakes fantasy plot, but more contemporary fiction. I really wanted to love this one. I'm really trying to find a good reincarnation, like a reincarnated fated mates love story done well, because I tried with this one, I tried with Our Infinite Fates, and they just both haven't been 100% hits for me, and I want one to be a hit for me. I had a couple issues with this one. First things first, this one's kind of getting nitpicky, but we had a lot of like WhatsApp mentions in this book, and I didn't see the point in the WhatsApp mentions. It was essentially like our character was texting people, right? And I feel like in a book, when you have characters texting, you can just use like text or message or whatever as your verb. But in this book, we just kept mentioning WhatsApp. It was like Lissa opened WhatsApp and sent a WhatsApp to this person. And then 10 pages later, we'd be like, oh, we got a WhatsApp notification. And I don't know, there was just something about mentioning the real world app of WhatsApp that I was like, why are we using WhatsApp? Why can't we just text? That's just like a weird nitpicky thing of mine. But moving past the WhatsApp thing, I think overall I did enjoy some of the writing of this book. It's definitely like a deeper, darker, more tragic type of story, which is funny because the cover of this looks so cute. Don't trust the cover of this book. It's one of those catfish books, okay? It's not a cute story. It's definitely a lot more sad, tragic. We're grieving, we're getting over something. It's not a happy, like, feel-good story. It's not really cute either. It's just kind of sad. And also, honestly, the structure of this book didn't feel like your typical romance structure, which honestly I kind of love usually because I love mixing it up. I get tired of the meet cute, build up, third act conflict, whatever, cute epilogue where they get married and have babies. I get bored of that. So I actually liked how this one didn't follow your typical like romance arc that you would expect. So that was also good. But what I didn't love about this one is there was a particular message in this one. Like the thing we basically needed our main character to work on to break out of her cycle of these like failed reincarnated love stories was a very, very straightforward lesson. It's nothing groundbreaking. Like when you get to the end of this book, you're like, really? That's it? That's all we had to do to break out of this cycle? Like, I don't know. I would just think that it would be something a bit more profound, just something a little bit more big. But the execution of like the finale and the final outcome was just, it was on one hand just too obvious, too simple for me, and on the other hand also bizarre in different ways. And you would have to read the book to know what I'm talking about, but the final chapter in this book was just like, huh? Like, what is going on? This doesn't make sense to me for my fantastical brain for like the magic to work this way. So yeah, I think my biggest grief with this book was the very ending and how just such a simple thing was so stretched out and could have been resolved so easily, but was stretched out over 400 pages. Maybe this is one of those books that would do very well as a novella. Like, give me 100 pages and this would hit so hard. But the fact that we spent 400 pages trying to learn to do something that just seemed very obvious from the start was just frustrating. And then our last book, oh my gosh, I feel like we've been here for so long. We've been talking about so many books, but we have Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash. So this is, I've been describing this as weird girl lit. I don't know if it falls in this genre because I'm honestly not very like familiar with the genre, but in my opinion, it gives me the vibes of this genre, and I absolutely loved this book. I devoured it. I read this book in one sitting. I started this at 8 p.m. one evening, and my bedtime is like 9 p.m. Okay, I'm usually in bed at 9 p.m. I started this book at 8 and I didn't go to sleep till it was done. Like, it was so compelling for me. I had to keep flipping the pages. But yeah, this one is a literary fiction, I guess you could call it, but we follow essentially just a very dysfunctional family filled with very dysfunctional characters. So we have a mother and a father who have recently decided to be in an open marriage. So they're both just kind of experimenting with things at this point and trying to figure things out, but they are really like, it's not working. Like, they are at their end essentially. Everything's really, really messy. And then also in this family, we have 3 daughters who are spiraling in their different ways. So we have our eldest daughter who is struggling with all sorts of her own things. So she puts a lot of emphasis on her physical appearance. She really tries to like dress herself up. And she has also recently started to date this guy who's much older, who used to be in the military and is now working as a security guard for this like really rich person's manor, like mansion household. We have our middle child who has kind of this like online chat room boyfriend who seems very, very suspicious in the things that he is saying to her. And she's like, I think she's like 13 years old or something. She's like a teenager, but she's like dating this online guy who is of like, we don't know what age he is. He's most definitely catfishing in some sort of a way, but she's insisting that she is in love with him. And then we have our youngest daughter who is oddly very smart for her age, but she's very insistent on these certain conspiracy theories that have to do with this rich guy who our security guard that the older daughter is dating. That rich guy who owns a lot of like companies in this town are, you know, she's very suspicious and she's like, he's watching us, he's doing this, he's like evil. There's like so many things that are going on. So she's very insistent on these, but because of her insistence on these and like getting into trouble because of them, she actually ends up being sent to one of those like wilderness reform camps. So those are our characters, and we have this kind of like, it's just conspiracy corrupt story going on as well. First things first, we need to comment about the writing style in this book because it is so interesting. It's very blunt. It's just very in your face. It's brutally honest. It's actually very, very honest about the world that we live in. Like the things that happen in this book are so, they feel far-fetched, but also you're like, this would happen. Like I could see this on the news. Like I have seen this on the news actually, but it's just very blunt, brutal, honest with that. There's also this quirk, this gimmick in this book where there's this theme with gnats. Okay, like gnats, like G-N-A-T, the bug or like the fly kind of a thing. We have this gnat infestation that is kind of like present in one of the side plots in this, but we see gnats everywhere. And I mean physically everywhere in the book, in the writing. At first I was like, are there just typos in this book? Like what is going on? But in certain words like exterminate, it would be written as exterminate just to insert the word gnat physically in the words. So basically any word that has like N-A-T in it, Madeline Cash would add a G in front of the N-A-T to add a nat in the word. So like, you know, the word is supposed to be exterminate, but it was written as extermignate. And also like donate, for example, was a word that was mentioned quite a few times, but instead of donate, it would be dognate, just to have the nat in there. I don't know what was going on with that, but it was just kind of a gimmick, I think, that was in the writing style that I'm still unsure of like how I feel about it. I think I'm neutral. I don't have any like strong feelings about it. It was just something weird. Yeah, this is just one of those stories I couldn't look away from. It was on one hand deeply disturbing and dark, but also so realistic and you couldn't look away. The characters in this story all kind of suck. Like you're not really rooting for them, but you're kind of rooting for them. Like you can't look away. You want what's best for them. You want them to succeed, but you don't even know what success would look like in these characters' arcs. You're like, I don't even know how this would ever turn out to be good, but you just like, you're kind of rooting for them, but you kind of hate them and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on? How big of a mess can we get into? And it just gets messier and messier and wilder, but it's just so interesting. I think in terms of my emotional journey with this one, it reminded me of how I felt with Intermezzo, where throughout the entire book I was like, oh my gosh, I just hate all of these characters. They suck. What is even going on? But then at the 80% mark, there's a switch in your brain and it's like, wait, I am invested. I do want what's best for them. Oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? And you don't really know what the turning point was or like what triggered it, but it just worked. So yeah, someone else read this book because I haven't really had anyone else to talk about this with, and it was just so intriguing. I couldn't look away. I read it in one sitting. I think if you're in a reading slump, this would be really good because it's kind of quirky, because it's a little bit different, because it's just kind of wild and bizarre. I think this would be actually really great to get you out of a reading slump because it's just like variety, you know, it's just different, at least for me. But yeah, that was Lost Lambs. That was a wild ride. All right, the stack has been cleared. So that is officially the reading wrap up. Those were the 14 books that I read in March. It was a really, really great reading month, I want to say. I only had one 5-star read, but I think overall I had a good time. And yeah, by the end of the month, I was just like mogging through books, like one book a day. It was wonderful. So the 3 books I read in one day were Small Things Like These. That was the first day. And then the second day I did Lost Lambs. And the third one I did Over and Over, which I did binge in a day. I didn't love it, but I did read it in a day. That being said though, now that we've wrapped up all of these books, let's get them up onto the shelves. right, I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. I hope you enjoyed this wrap up. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what your best and worst reads were in March. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!